Hi everyone, I'm Josh and welcome to Josh Wright Piano TV. Today I wanted to share 7 tips to help remedy hand pain and strategies included in those 7 tips to help hopefully alleviate hand pain in your practice. I've shared all these tips on my channel before, but in different videos, but I wanted to condense one video for hand pain to address that. I did address a lot of these things in my video on tendonitis. You can check that out. I may have said something in that I'm not going to say in this, and vice versa. But if you're experiencing any type of hand pain, outside of genetic things like arthritis that might come in involuntarily, if you're getting pain from practicing, I have some solutions that can hopefully help you. The first thing is to rest, to take a break. A lot of times when students start to feel pain, they will over practice. They will go harder into it, which is just exacerbating the problem so much more quickly. If your hand is not liking a passage, if you feel, and when I say your hand, I mean if you're experiencing pain, I sometimes think of this as in the third person, but if your hand's not liking the passage, if it doesn't feel comfortable in your hand, you need to reevaluate things. You don't need to drill harder. If you can't memorize your piece, or you're being lazy and things are sloppy and your alignment's bad, well, you probably should drill the passage more. But if you're experiencing hand pain on a passage that shouldn't be, well, no passage should actually cause pain. There are things that are easier to have pain be present, like lots of really heavy octaves passages. I've seen students get tendonitis in their forearms or carpal tunnel if they're not careful, and there are some things that we'll talk about later to help remedy that as well. But the first thing is don't over practice, don't drill that in further. So that's step number 1, have a resting period. And it doesn't mean complete rest. You don't have to just stop playing it for months and months. You can, and that might solve your issue. Or you can just rest. You can do a little bit of it and then rest. And then a little bit of it, then rest. And most of the time, and we'll get into this in step 4, but most of the time, it's fast, heavy practice that causes the pain. So taking a slower, softer dynamic, slower tempo, softer dynamic can help. Number 2, hot-cold therapy. This really helped me. The first time, I've had tendonitis twice in my life. One was in my pinky, and that was when I was 12. And then I actually got it in my 4th finger like 2 years ago from over drilling thirds. I kind of got this obsession, like I'm going to finally get this. I could do thirds in an inverted fingering, no problem. But getting it in a standard fingering, I was just stubborn and being a moron. And I got a little bit, I just felt it barely coming on. I was like, I'm done. And I didn't have to do any hot-cold therapy or anything else. It went away after 2 days. The pinky came from this when I was 12. I might have been 14, actually, when I played that piece. And I just drilled that. I'd never experienced hand pain before. This was new. And I was like, oh, that must just be my muscles building up. It hurt so bad that I had to do these. So I would get a sink, or I would just have the hot water running on the sink, and then I would have an ice bucket next to the sink. And what you want to do is you just want to just massage it like this between the thumb and the fingers. You just want to massage the finger up and down and then side to side. That can help to relax the muscle. That really helped me. I got rid of it in maybe 3 or 4 weeks by doing that every day, a couple times a day actually at the beginning, and then maybe once a day, and then every few days, and then it went away. But the biggest thing was remedying how I was practicing, but that helped to get rid of the pain as I was changing my practice habits. So hot-cold therapy is really magic. It's really healthy as well. Like I love if you ever take like a hot bath and then rinse off an ice-cold water, that it feels really good on your skin. It's very therapeutic for your muscles. So hot cold therapy is very good. That's step number 2. Step number 3 is using a little electrode. You can get one on Amazon. Chiropractors sometimes use these, and they're used in pain management. Basically, it's just a little sticky patch that you can put anywhere, and then you can turn the electricity on and it will pulse. Sometimes it'll go more intense and then less intense, more intense, less intense. You have to be careful on your hands because we don't have a whole lot of muscle and tissue between skin and bones, so it can be very intense. Like you could turn it full bore on your back, you know, if you were having back pain, but you might, on 1 to 10, you might be at a 1 on your pinky or something if you were having pinky pain. So, or if you're having wrist pain, just go gentle. Don't overdo that. And I think that you have to limit that. You may want to do some research. I think that if you use an electrode beyond 15 or 20 minutes at a time, it can have adverse effects from what I've read and what I've done in the past when I had some back and hip pain from unrelated things to piano. But I used that and that really helped me. And I've had students say that it did help them. Especially, I remember one time I've been exercising on a regular basis now for 3 or 4 years, like heavy weightlifting. And I did, for the last time, I did straight barbell curls. I just do dumbbells now for curls. And it hurt so bad. It was the first time I had done straight barbell curls because I'd always done dumbbells. And there was all this pain right here. I probably was lifting a little too much weight and my muscles weren't used to that. I'm sure I did it in the wrong way. And I used that electrode and it went away after like a day. But those electrodes can really help. And I think I paid $20 or $30 for my electrode on Amazon. I've had it for years. It works great. Okay, so those are 3 things that kind of remedy the pain: rest, hot cold therapy, and your electrode. Step number 4 through 7, we're getting into practical solutions to help get rid of the pain. You don't have to completely stop practicing unless the pain is like so excruciating that you can't even play without it hurting so bad. So take a break if that's the case. But if it's just a little dull pain or nagging pain, we want to kind of restructure how we're practicing. So the first step, step number 4 in this video, is slow practice with plenty of short breaks. Let's say that the winter wind etude's giving you some pain. Okay, so the first thing I would do is stop practicing loud, okay? And maybe just isolate the hand. You really don't need that every single time you're gonna play and work on the right hand. So let's just practice this. There's a few things going on here that I want to observe. I want to observe the natural hand movement and if there's any tension setting in. Okay, so I have a little bit of finger action going on. I have, because I'm going back and forth, I have a little bit of doorknob turning in the wrist. I don't have a whole lot of this wavy type of motion that you might use on something like the Opus 25 number 1 etude. This is Opus 25 number 11 by Chopin. Sorry if I didn't say that earlier. I'm using that doorknob turning rotation. I'm using a little bit of finger action. And I can actually kind of feel the floppiness of this. I can actually feel all the way up in here. I can feel those tendons or muscles just very relaxed. Let's say that you get to a particular note and you notice something weird happening. So let's say you go here, and then your hand does something like that, okay? That is something we can just identify in this video as a tension catalyst. There's a particular note or a particular thing that sets tension into your hand. How do you get rid of it? That takes us to step number 5. Okay, step number 5 is reducing tension through 2 exercises that I call free hands. Free hands was originally published on my channel like maybe 10 years ago. It was after I did a lesson with Sergei Babayan, and we were doing the Mendelssohn series variations. I've mentioned this a million times on my channel. Sorry, that was terrible. He said, and originally I'd played it a little tight, and he said, Josh, you gotta release all the tension out of your hands. Release the tension out of your hands. So, let's see. He went on in other lessons to teach me this exercise called the up-down exercise. Basically, what that does is that helps you you kind of fling your wrist back and throw it back down. I have a whole video dedicated to that. Don't just take that advice right there and run with it. Watch that video if you want to learn that method. It's the whole concept of landing on the note far before you need to play it. So when you finally do get to full tempo, you're used to these really lightning fast impulses and getting into position. You might not be waiting there like you were in a slow tempo, but that will help you. So that's free hands part 1. Free hands part 2 is just a little something I made up because a student was having this flying pinky problem. He would go like that, okay, versus keeping the pinky relaxed. Okay, and I just recently went over that in a long scales video that I called the scale rebuild video, if you want to check that out in particular. But this free hands part 2, you shake each finger. So you identify that tension catalyst that we talked about in step 4. Like, okay, when I hit this number 2, my fingers do some weird thing. I don't know what your fingers are doing. But you've identified, hey, that note is where something weird happens. You got to figure out where it is. You go to that note. Let's say it's this A right there, and you do something weird right there. You go to that A, and you shake it out like this, like you're doing vibrato on a violin, okay? I guess this would be your bow hand, probably, if you're playing. Yeah. So, okay, and make sure when you get to there that you're not doing extraneous motion. There is something called sympathetic motion, which is like as you are, you know, playing a certain note, like if you're playing 3, see how my 4 moves a little bit with that? I learned that from Logan Skelton. That was very helpful just to identify sympathetic motion. You're not trying to completely isolate it. That can cause all sorts of other issues. But you're also not doing these like wide, weird, sudden, jolty movements that, you know, and your hand tucks in or extends in a weird way. And you could even do this through the whole passage. This is what I call free hands part 2. Part 1 is chords. Part 2 you can use on scales and arpeggios, any passage work. Okay, and then check it. When I get to there, is my hand relaxed? You can just do that a bunch of times, and you can practice add on forward. So you go from that point and add a couple notes on forward, or one note at a time until you've built up quite a few notes, and you can go backward as well. So if this is your note, I'm not going to be able to do this off the top of my head, but you would go, so I'd go there, and then I'm doing my best here to remember it. And then, so you add up to that point, and then you can add after that point, and pretty soon the passage can loosen up a lot. You can do the same thing with octaves. You just add on very slowly. I remember I wanted to do a list, half of the program of the music of Liszt, and I said I should probably relearn the Liszt Rhapsody No. 6 that gave me problems when I was like 14. I played it a lot when I was a teenager. That was just the first little bout of it that had the tendonitis in it, but then I got over it and it went fine. I never played it like Argerich does by any means, but it was a good piece for me. And I remember even in my, I think it was mid-20s is the last time I played it, so probably 10 years ago. I remember I had to do a lot of practice. It's kind of a high-maintenance little piece. I did a lot of arm motion to get that nice and relaxed, and then I did wrist motion, and then I did abbreviated wrist motion, and I would just do little bouts of it. So, and then I would group them. I'd go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So maybe 6 forward like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3. I do little stuff like that, observing the movement, observing how I could release tension strategically. And you're going to have to come up with your own ways of doing this. I've shared hundreds of videos on this channel about my advice, stuff that's worked for me, stuff that I've learned from my teachers, stuff I've learned in my own practice or from teaching other people. But I don't even scratch the surface of all the possibilities. So figure out ways of reducing that tension. I like the free hands part 1 and part 2. That's always worked for me. Number 6, we already touched on, I built it into that discussion, is add-on. So you start from a tension point and you go 1 note before it. So you go to the tension point and make sure your hand's relaxed. And then you could go 2 notes before it, 3 notes before it, if you want to do that way. Or you could do 1 note before to the tension point and then 1 note after. So now you're at 3 notes. And then 1 note before. So now you're at 4 notes. one note after. Now you're at 5 notes, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And after you get to a certain amount of notes, you're good. Now, if every part of a passage feels tight, then you need to rework fundamentally how you do that passage. And I have a million different practice methods. I'll actually link a free webinar below, 10 of my favorite tips to take your playing to a higher level. Those 10 tips cure most issues I have at the piano when I'm, even to this day, working on things. So that should help. So step number 6 is add-on. That's very helpful. And then 7 is related to these other steps, but finding a new pathway. Something I told a student last week, and he came back, it was like 2 days ago that I taught him, and he said, that was life-changing, what you told me. And I was like, really? And I was like, I basically told him, he was getting caught kind of on this part of the key, because, I mean, this part of the key has the best leverage point. That part of the key is lighter than up here, slightly lighter here, slightly heavier up here. So we don't want to play the piano way up here. But I said, don't be afraid to use the full extent of the key. We've got several inches here. What is that, 5 or 6 inches there that we can use. We don't have to just be confined. So when you're playing a C major scale, you can use the full key. Even though I'm mostly just playing in this range right here, I'm touching parts of the key up here. So one thing that I like to demonstrate with is the Opus 25 number 2. That's usually a good first etude that students like to go through. It's besides Opus 10 number 6, and maybe the cello etude, maybe this etude. This etude has a lot of complexities in the middle that are really hard. This one's actually a pretty friendly one. Rather than just practicing finger staccato, which is a great method, and just reaching the fingers in on the blacks and then keeping the whites more curved, what you could do is you can move your hand in and out like this. And your natural instincts usually guide you correctly. There's occasional times where a student's doing like the exact opposite movement of what you'd want. They're like coming way forward on a white key and way out on a black, and they might be like slipping off keys or doing something that's setting in tension. But for the most part, I notice that if I come up and around, that pathway is very nice. And then just a little turn there. That almost just feels like a complete circle there. And then pretty soon you start going faster. So I'm allowing myself to use the full keyboard and find a new pathway for the hand to travel. I'm not just consigned to the edge of the keys where I have the best leverage point. Yes, you usually want to play in that area whenever you can because it's the best leverage point, but don't feel confined to that space. A lot of students, for whatever reason, feel like I've got to have these curved fingers all the time. A lot of times I like to use, I recently did a scales video. I think I may have mentioned in this video or a previous video. I'm recording a big batch of videos right now. And I talked about in that scale video, it's a scale rebuild video, how I actually ran into a problem like this not too long ago where I would go here rather than here. So the thumb was kind of a tension catalyst for me. And so I've had to retrain my hand to open. It didn't happen at all in my left hand, but as I've retrained that right hand to open up when the thumb plays, it can just then take the keys. And it doesn't feel as good as my left hand. My left hand's more compact and curved, but it's working. I've been able to get back to the speeds I've always played in. My left hand has actually excelled more than it ever has as it's retaught the right hand how to do things. So that's, I guess, tip number 8 is you can have the pain-free hand teach the painful hand how to retrain that. Watch the movements in your other hand. If you have, most of the time students struggle with their left hand. So, and I've had plenty of struggles in my left hand as well. So I will play the right hand. You can play symmetrically. So you can look at the half steps and whole steps between the keys. and you can go from there and figure it out. By the way, your symmetry point is A flat. So if you're playing A major in the right hand, you would play like that in the left hand, if you're retraining your right hand like I was with some scalar movements. So finding that new pathway can really help a lot. The last little piece of advice that hopefully can provide a little comfort is throughout your life, you might change, or you're going to change as a musician, of course, but your technique might change as well. Some things might come easier, but that might cause you to have to rework something in your technique that you had never thought of before, or that you'd never had a problem with before. Overall, I think that process of reworking things, if you've set pain into your hand somehow, by over-practicing or by using a movement that's not working, don't think of that as the most horrible negative thing. Like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I shouldn't have done that. I'm a terrible pianist. I'll never heal. These types of things are absolutely false. If just with some good information and good training and patience and slow practice, you can get yourself out of that situation, and actually it will serve you better in the future. Because when I was 13, 14, 12, I can't remember when I learned that, I'd never done that before, as I mentioned. Now, anytime I feel that little sensation, it might just happen for like 2 seconds. I'm like, okay, I'm doing something. And I haven't, besides the stupid thirds obsession that I had for a few months, a few years ago, I've never had hand pain besides that. And I'm being completely honest. I'm very honest on this channel. I tell you guys all my problems. You're probably sick of hearing all my problems. But that's not something I've dealt with because I went through it one time. Hopefully you never have to go through it by watching this video. If you're not already dealing with hand pain, hopefully you never have to by using these 7 tips, and we went over a few extra tips. So I hope that helps and provides a little bit of hope and some solutions to help get over your ailment. Something totally unrelated, look at if you're experiencing general pain, you may want to look at inflammatory foods that you might be working on and overall therapies to reduce tension in your body overall. I know for me, when I was 17, I had like crippling back pain because I used to play like this. You can see a really old video of my crazy bleached hair as a 16-year-old playing the Rachmaninoff Paganini variations. And I like cringe when I watch that, not because the playing's bad, but because I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I ever survive? I had to really retrain myself. See, I'm much more at ease when I'm in a good position. So what you're doing to set that hand pain in might have just scratched the surface of a bigger problem. That's just a manifestation of a bigger problem. Maybe you are doing something weird with your pinky and that's causing the pain, but you might be doing something with your shoulder or your arm, and having to observe that and rework that is going to provide future benefits in ways you might not have considered. So don't give up hope. I hope that helps. If any of you have any questions, my email is josh@joshwrightpiano. I will link that webinar in the description below, as well as a few of my paid courses if you'd like to go even deeper than this channel goes over, along with a gear kit, all the lighting, microphones, cameras that I use to film these videos. Have a great week. Good luck in your practice sessions.